So we are continuing our Pathways to Recovery and Resiliency Funding webinar series. And as a reminder, this series is intended to break down state and local funding opportunities to better help local governments and community partners navigate and access potential solutions for the challenges they are facing. So we have been hosting this during our local government coordination call each month since June. And so today we're going to talk about the transportation funding opportunities that are coming down the line. And we have some great folks over at CDOT that will be providing that. So I will turn it back over to the CDOT folks.
Hi, everyone. This is Jamie again. I'm so sorry that I was going in and out.
There you go. That's better. Thanks.
I'm so sorry. I think it was my headphones. I am Jamie Grimm. I am the federal and local government liaison here at CDOT, and we just wanted to go over some of the transportation funding opportunities in the IIJA. It is our reauthorization. So many of the programs that are already contained in this bill are projects that are programs that previously existed, and Eric is going to be covering those. There are two types of funding. I mean, there are many types of funding within IIJA, but two of the big ones are formula funding, which is funding that comes directly to CDOT based on lane miles, population, a historic formula that disperses money to all of the states. And then there's discretionary grant funding, which Hannah will be covering. A lot of new grant opportunities. As many of you know, there's over $150 billion worth of discretionary grants in the IIJA. Obviously not all going to transportation, but a lot of opportunities. So I'm going to pass it over to Eric, who is going to be able to discuss our formula funding and how that impacts local governments.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for having me. Next slide, please. So the first few slides I'm going to cover are mostly just references and resources for you, so you can have some direct contacts. We have 5 different regions at CDOT, and they cover these areas here on the map you see. And each area has, or each region has their own transportation planner. So I gave you the names of the primary contacts there. And then we do have a headquarters planner, gentleman, Aaron Willis, who works for our Division of Transportation Development and also helps oversee a lot of the planning processes. Next slide, please. So as Jamie mentioned, we have tons of grant opportunities. Many of them are considered pass-through opportunities where CDOT helps to facilitate the federal dollars and get them over to the local agencies to expend. So just wanted to list a bunch of, we're not going to go through this list here, but wanted to provide this as a resource so that you can feel free to contact these individuals if you have questions about those specific grants. Next, please. Wanted to also mention that we do have a local agency resource website. It includes what we call the desk reference. It used to be a manual of sorts. Mostly it's online now. And our lead engineer is Kathy Cole. She will be retiring, unfortunately, soon, but she's currently the contact for local agency resourcing. This information can help a local actually plan for their funding, do the design work of that project, and then the construction execution of the project. So those were some resources. Now I'll kind of dive in a little bit more to the funding. So as Jamie mentioned, the IIJA was mostly a reauthorization of our transportation bill. And those pass-through funds, we have the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. Typically, that's for only large urban areas controlled by the DRCOG, Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, and North Front Range. We do have bridge off system, and this is noteworthy because the previous to the IIJA, the funding level for this program was stuck at 2009 levels, and the IIJA represented a significant increase. We have the TAP program, which is for bike and pedestrian activities. We do suballocate a lot of our highway safety improvement program funding. Those are opportunities for any local to apply. And then we have the congestion mitigation air quality, otherwise known as CMAQ, which is for historical, kind of more smog related and air quality kind of issues. Next slide, please. And then the IIJA did create a few new programs. These two here are funding opportunities available to local governments. The carbon reduction program is available. So there are dollars that are committed for the large urban areas that historically have received funding, such as the STBG that I referenced, or CMAQ. But it also created funding for areas 50,000 through 200,000, which is sort of a first to have suballocated amounts for those smaller urban areas. That includes areas like Boulder, Greeley, Longmont, Grand Junction, etc. And carbon reduction, I'll cover that a little bit more in detail in the next slide, but also wanted to mention we create, go back one more, sorry about that. The other new program is the NEVI program, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan program, and that is a co-op between CDOT and the Colorado Energy Office. Thank you. All right, so a little bit more about carbon reduction. Like I mentioned, we do have a historical program that was meant to reduce pollution in the immediate areas, suffering from it, such as Denver and so on. But the carbon reduction program is meant to reduce the greater footprint caused by transportation, across the nation and our states. So a couple of the funding opportunities here, or eligibilities here, that's just a few of them. This program covers quite a bit of different opportunities. Next slide, please. And the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, like I mentioned, this is a joint program administered by the Colorado Electric or Energy Office. So this is for obviously electric vehicle charging, infrastructure, a little bit of the EV, communications technology, that sort of thing. Obviously, so some other eligibilities. This program did require a NEVI plan in order to be really, CDOT had to lead the charge of developing a plan so that we can receive this funding from the feds. I do have a link to the Energy Office's website that I'm going to put into the chat. And that's a place that you can, I think, go through. The grants, as I understand it, are going to be made by the Colorado Energy Office. So that's the place that you would go to actually apply. But we do have a representative on that sheet that I provided earlier that you can contact that works for CDOT. His name is Michael King. Yeah, and with that, I will pass it over to Hannah.
Thank you, Eric. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? I know that CDOT's been having some trouble with its audio. Am I coming in clear? I'm going to take the silence as a yes.
You sound great. Yep.
Okay, good. So I'm going to be going over the discretionary programs, which are the fun ones. You got to fight for those. The first two are kind of the existing programs that were available in some form before IIJA. And again, IIJA is just kind of reauthorizing existing funds through a new legislation. The RAISE and MPDG programs. So RAISE is Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. This is just kind of a catch-all investment in road, rail, transit, and port projects that promise to achieve national objectives. The RAISE 2023 cycle is open right now. So I think the full NOFO just dropped about a week ago. Applications are due February 28th. And so I do want to drop this link in the chat for everyone, if I can. This is just kind of the DOT homepage for RAISE. And then MPDG stands for Multimodal Project Discretionary Grant Program. This is kind of an umbrella program or a parent program that houses 3 actual grant programs underneath it. So mega, infra, and rural surface transportation. These 2 programs together cast the broadest net for project type, I would say. There are like emphases between each programs on freight significance and project cost restrictions, things like that. But chances are high that any given transportation project will likely be eligible for at least one of these 4 programs. So the RAISE or the 3 programs under MPDG. Next slide, please. So this list here is kind of the newer discretionary programs that IIJA offered funding for through this at least 2026. So I'm going to be going vertically down the list here, starting with more MPDG. So like I said, it was 3 programs under 1 title. So the new program under that is MEGA. And as the name denotes, this is for super huge projects, like massive, size typically determined by cost. So these are kind of like hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's why there's billions available through this new funding program. Most of what you need to know in terms of project eligibility is kind of right in the name of the grant. That's why so many of them have these like dorky acronyms or things like that. But it just tells you what it is the funding is going to go towards. So moving down, bridge investment or BIP, it's funding exclusive to bridge work. The PROTECT program is an acronym for promoting resilient operations for transformative, efficient, and cost savings transportation. So the word you're looking for in that title is resiliency. So this transportation program typically supports like a resilience towards extreme weather events, natural disasters, but even just the test of time or increasing use. So like using stronger construction materials or more environmentally friendly strategies for building, things like that. And then railroad crossing elimination, right in the name, this funding is exclusive to railroad crossing safety. So eliminating a crossing is obviously the most effective way to reduce rail and highway collision, but this program does so. That's kind of the main focus of the program, but it does allow for simpler safety improvements like rail line relocations, things like that. The 4 programs on the right column here are newer programs through the IIJA that are more like locally based or centric. So everything, and they're like pilot programs like the others. So what this first year's launch, the most change that we're going to see is between this first and second year of funding. So Reconnecting Communities pilot or RCP, these are projects that are heavily steeped in community-based and local-centric benefit and input. So eligible projects here are more along the lines of like pedestrian walkways, bike paths, mobility parks that connect transit lines and bus stops. And then transit-oriented development planning or TOD. This is a planning exclusive opportunity that invests in studies, analyses, preliminary engineering work for the purpose of transit-oriented development. So for example, like planning a series of bus stops or park and rides through your town or county that are directly linked to affordable housing or new commercial developments, that kind of work. SS4A stands for Safe Streets and Roads for All. This is funding for programs to advance the Zero Death Initiative in your municipality or county. State governments were not eligible to apply for this program in 2022, so that really kind of opened up and loosened a lot of the competitive challenges. So, and state governments will likely not be eligible to apply in the future. We don't know if that will change, but we don't think so. So this was like a local only opportunity. And then the SMART program, so strengthening mobility and revolutionizing transportation. This was like a really technical, technologically advanced grant program that was new this year. It's funding to support the development of smart technology communities. So the jargon associated with this program went way over my head, but there are opportunities here for improving the community through technology as it denotes, so like audio technology at pedestrian crosswalks or for visually impaired pedestrians, or sensor technology for metered ramps, things like that. Next slide, please. So just some notes on project and program selection and peering. Speaking on both behalf of CDOT and the generally advised approach to grants, how to decide which projects to apply for and under which grant program depends on a few major factors that we've already mentioned. The first most absolute one being the eligibility criteria laid out in the NOFO. The NOFO is a beast of a document. It's often like 60, 70, 100 pages of a lot of like kind of legal jargon, but it tells you everything you need to know. It tells you which projects will be, given a thorough review, which ones will be thrown out with even just like one component not being eligible kind of. So it's really important to go through the NOFO as an applying entity or just an interested entity. The second factor being the project's competitiveness. So while your project might be technically eligible, there does have to be a competitive factor, and that you're checking more boxes than just like, okay, yeah, it's technically a bridge repair, but what else is needed to make sure that it stands out from every bridge repair application that will be going for the bridge investment program. And then CDOT specifically, we rely on our 10-year plan to determine which projects are currently considered statewide priorities. The 10-year plan is a comprehensive stakeholder-informed pipeline of priority projects that are broken up by CDOT's engineering regions and the years that we'll have funding devoted to it. So that's what we use to kind of determine which direction we're going with the projects we want to pursue. And CDOT is always thrilled to hear from our local partners on potential applications. The support that CDOT can provide is determined entirely case by case, and the depth of support varies based on our priorities, like what's in our 10-year plan, the bandwidth of our internal staff, and then the competitiveness of the project that our local partners might bring to our attention. And so anyone interested or who have a project they just want to share, they can always email me. My information was on the first slide of our presentation here. Next, I guess I can talk about these. So just examples of some of the local partner applications that CDOT co-sponsored or supported this past year. So like the MPDG and RAISE programs, only 3 applications were allowed per entity. So CDOT itself, under our unique entity like identification number through grants.gov, we could only submit 3 projects. We had a lot that we wanted to go for because these programs are so diverse in what they will fund. So we actually submitted our own 3 and then partnered with 5 county partners to submit an additional. So CDOT had kind of its fingers in 8 different applications for these two programs. And so that covered a huge span of how we supported. We can offer letters of support, we can help with cost sharing and matching, grant application production. It just depends on the project and the grant program. And then so the Reconnecting Communities program in 2022, CDOT did not submit its own application. Instead, we provided matching funds to the city of Trinidad to help them reconfigure an intersection that would reconnect East and West Trinidad that was divided by the I-25 viaduct project that CDOT did several years ago. So those are just a couple of examples of how we supported locals and how they supported us in 2022. Next slide. This is just a brief overview of the monster that we call grants.gov. So for agencies who have never used grants.gov or those who have only managed to wrangle it once or twice, I would argue that navigating grants.gov is one of the most difficult challenges of submitting the actual grant proposal. If not the most difficult, they don't make it easy. So if you take nothing else away from this presentation, please at least just in the next 2 weeks, ensure that you can get to grants.gov and you can get logged in. They just changed this year in April, the login kind of process for it. So now they go through login.gov instead of just logging in directly through grants.gov. And the best way to know if the login information that you have is like the correct profile and the correct permissions to apply is just to go in and start an application. So there's no penalty or restriction associated with opening your application as soon as you've decided that you want to apply. And if you change your mind later, you can always delete the application that's pending. Like you're not committed to submitting anything. So just make sure, you can get into grants.gov, and when you get to the main page of the grant opportunity you're interested in, look at that apply button up in the upper right-hand corner. Make sure it's red and clickable, and just start the application and see what's required. Excuse me. So if you can log in, but there's the apply button is grayed out or you can't click it, that means someone else within your organization has higher permissions than you in grants.gov, and you need to figure out who that is. It's a really complicated process, and I really just suggest getting in as soon as possible.
Hannah,
Next
this
slide.
is Chantal. I'm going to give you a nudge. You have a few more minutes.
Yeah, next slide, please. Awesome, thank you. So this is my last one. I just wanted to talk about helpful links and resources. You guys can all check these out here, and they're listed, what they have in them. So key NOFOs and deadlines right from DOT. This is just a chart that has all of them in there, kind of the basic information you need to know. FHWA's one-stop shop on bill, which is the legislation that enacted IIJA, the White House guidebook, and then Colorado Transportation Commission packet. I put out a memo every month to TC that talks about grants and specifically what CDOT is applying for, if anyone's interested in looking at that or just keeping up to date on grants that are out and things like that. So that's it for me. Thanks, everybody.